I'm Josh Gross. Welcome to Beverly Hills View. Our guest tonight, former County Supervisor Gloria Molina. Gloria, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You have a career of over 30 years in elected politics. You've retired from the County Board of Supes end of last year. Have you had some time to just sort of decompress and look back on your career of 30 plus years?
Well, I've been too busy to do that, and it's been a healthy kind of busy, so not really. I hope to do, though, eventually. I'm planning a trip to Europe in fall, so hopefully it'll be one of those times where you can sit back and reflect and do all of those kinds of things.
You know, when we were getting ready for the show here, we were talking about how you've been operating at a very fast speed for a very long time.
Right.
And what has it been like now to leave elected office and to pursue other interests outside of the elected sphere?
Well, it's a little different from the standpoint that you don't have to get up and go do something every day. So you plan your own schedule, which is sort of a nightmare all by itself because you've had people doing it for you for a while. Right. So that part of it. But actually, I'm very busy every day. I've now taken more time to get involved in some of the boards that I've been on for a number of years, and now getting more actively involved in committees. And then there's a whole other part of me that's sort of artistic, although I'm a quilter, and so I've expanded that and created more opportunity to do more of that. So I'm keeping fairly busy, and of course spending a little bit more time with my family as well.
We're going to talk about the quilting. I have that on my mental list here. But first, take me back to 1982, your first campaign for state assembly. Just to set this up for our viewers. The Golden Palminos didn't want to let you in. There was a boys' club at that time that ran Latino politics in the East Side. Tell me a little bit about how you broke in there.
Well, it wasn't about Gloria Molina. It was about the women in the community. We had decided that we wanted to see a woman in the U.S. Congress, a Latina, and that, you know, at that time we had gone to the men in the community and asked about an opportunity since we knew 2 congressional seats were coming up. Regrettably, they decided very clearly that they already had candidates in place and very frankly weren't interested in one of us running. And so eventually there was an opportunity in my own backyard as an assembly seat opened up, and I decided to run, thinking that now again they would be supportive, but instead they decided not to. And so it created a lot of controversy, everything from the standpoint, you know, power is hard to give up, and they already had people lined up for it and so on. But we as women felt very strongly that we needed that pathway into elected politics to be policymakers, and so I was chosen to be the candidate. Originally I was going to be the campaign manager, so I ended up the candidate, and we were very fortunate in 1982 to break through that barrier and be the first Latina in the California state legislature. And I've been followed by a lot of promising women legislators that have been done a terrific job, and so I'm proud of that.
There's 2 tracks to your political career. One is breaking the all-male power structure, and one was breaking the all-Anglo power structure that at one time in both the City Council and the Board of Supes. We had your friend Yvonne Burke on the show a couple months ago.
Great.
I'm going to show you a clip right now of Yvonne talking about what it was like to first get in the state assembly when she was elected. We're going to compare it to your time. Take a look. Sacramento in the late 60s, you were one of 3 women in the assembly. March Fong Yu, many people remember Secretary of State later, she was one of them. What was it like? Obviously you would encounter sexism, and it was a very different culture to have women in elected office. So tell me, what was it like to be
Well, the first thing was who would sit next to me. And then the next thing was, would lobbyists be willing to talk to or have lunch with an African-American woman or a Chinese woman? These things were really big that they were discussing and debating. So one person, Leo Ryan, I understand, in the Democratic caucus said, I will sit next to her. He sat next to me and we became friends. Over the years, he went to Congress also at the same time I went there. So I knew him until
he
the
was
time
tragically
that
shot
he was
in Guyana.
In Guyana, yes.
That was her experience when she first got there. What was it like when you first got there?
Well, I didn't even know there was a seating problem. There may have been. I ended up seating to a good friend who later got in some trouble, Gary Condit, who went on to Congress. But I had a very good experience, but the sexism was the same. They still treated us as secondary. I mean, anytime we spoke up and things of that sort. And we had some sexist issues right on the floor of the assembly from time to time. So we had to deal with that. And of course, being the only Latina as well, you know, people came up to us and so great to have you here. Now we can work on on the issues of childcare and bilingual education.
Right, that's all you'd be interested in.
Right. I mean, I'm really interested about job growth and taxation issues, and they weren't interested. So anyway, that there's always those kinds of barriers. But what you have to do is, when you're the first, you have to set the standard. Right. Yvonne Burke did that, and that's what we had to follow. If she wouldn't have had such a promising career and had done so well, there wouldn't have been the kind of opportunities for many of us. And so hopefully I set the standard as well, at a high standard for many of the Latinas that followed me as well. But that's the nature of when you're the first, and you just have to grin and bear it and move forward.
Looking at California politics and the massive changes both in demographics and politics since the 1980s, in the last statewide election, not one Republican won a statewide office. Did you ever think in your lifetime you'd see such a radical shift towards the Democratic Party, towards your wing of the party for the most part? Does that surprise you? Did you always see it coming?
Well, I mean, of course, I'm a Democrat, so I think a lot of people should think like many of us as Democrats, but of course, that's not the way it is. You know, but what the unfortunate part about it is that it has created a stale kind of situation as well, because now the reapportionment has created very safe Democratic seats and very safe Republican seats. And so very frankly, what is going on is created a very stale operation as far as Congress is concerned and some of those opportunities. But really, I am glad that we're becoming a more Democratic state, although now for the presidential election, it looks like we're just going to be a money state. They're not probably going to come in here and campaign at all, since we're so solidly on the Democratic side. And I hope it to be that way. I think that our Democratic candidates are very promising. I just hope that they would step up a little bit more into public policy and stay away from the special interest. I know it's a very attractive pathway, but I really think it's an important, if we're really now have this great opportunity, let's take advantage and make the changes that we need positively for the rest of the community.
1987, you moved on to the LA City Council. What made you want to go for that race at that time?
Well, you know, it's interesting. One of the things about legislating up in Sacramento is that is exactly what you do. You're very distant from people and the issues of the community. So very frankly, you're legislating it, putting it in a book of statutes, and then at the end of the day, you don't even know if it's implemented or not. So I like the idea of coming home and being closer to the community. And so that was great, although it was very limiting as well, because you were only working on land use issues and budget issues and things of that sort. You didn't have the range of issues. And so great, when the opportunity came up to run for the Board of Supervisors, it had a great range of issues, and you also had the opportunity of being not only kind of a legislative aspect of it, but the executive aspect as well, because you saw the implementation of programs. And that's what I've enjoyed the best, and I've enjoyed serving these last 23 years on the Board of Supervisors. It was a great opportunity.
We're going to talk about Board of Soups after the break, but in terms of the assembly background, the council background, was there one you think that prepared you better than the other? Or you think they were more or less equal training for being on the Board of Soups?
Well, absolutely. I think the assembly was the best training, because that's when you break through. You're working with such a large number of legislators with different points of view, having an opportunity to range so many bills that you have to deal with every single day, serving on committees, a very, very active kind of political responsibility. That's the best training that I received. So that prepared me, and so I was better equipped to go on to the City Council, and then, of course, better equipped to go on to the Board of Supervisors.
Now, before you were elected, though, and again, a lot of the young people watching the show today won't even know that this went on, but you basically had to fight for your seat on the Board of Soups via a legal challenge that took many years, and the county at that time actually opposed, spent $10 million in 1990s dollars, which is just unbelievable to think today. But tell us a little bit about what went into actually creating that seat that you later ran for.
Well, I was very fortunate. Way back before I was elected, I also worked on a group called Californios, which was a group of Latino lawyers and various other activists who were involved in saying we need to change the reapportionment, the way the lines are drawn to create opportunity district for Latinos to have a chance. This Board of Supervisors had divided it up in like a pie, very similar, so that the minority community was in the center of the city. So for the most part, we were part of every district, not enough of a number to ever have any clout or ability to run one of our own. Luckily, MALDEF was able to file a lawsuit. It was a tough lawsuit. They fought LA County all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, and in 1991, it was clearly decided that the county had violated the voting rights law and to change those lines. And once they did, they created what was known as the First District. And I was in a position at that time, being on the city council, living in the First District, to have an opportunity to run for that seat. It was only an opportunity. I ran with 11 other candidates.
When you look back at now, though, was it fate? Was it timing? Was it just everything sort of converged at once to make it the right opportunity for you?
Well, timing is essential, and of course being prepared to take advantage of that opportunity is the other component of it, and putting it all together and making it work. So I was very fortunate that time. There's a lot of luck that's involved as well, but very frankly putting everything in place, and it was a great opportunity, and I was fortunate to win this seat, and I've enjoyed doing the work. That's been tremendous.
Well, we're going to talk about it, but let's take a look at one more clip before our break. We had your friend Zev Yaroslavsky on the show, and he said this about the old 5 kings, 5 queens phrase, which you've heard before. Take a look. We'll talk about transportation in a second, but the old expression was the 5 little kings. Is that an accurate depiction? I mean, is there camaraderie amongst the 5 of you? Is there conflict? What goes on behind the scenes?
Well, it varies. You know, I think the 5 little kings is probably more appropriate for 35, 40 years ago than it is now. They had a lot more money to spend in those days. Before Prop 13, I think they were very powerful.
Sure.
Richard Nixon is supposed to have said that if he wasn't president of the United States, the next job he really wanted was county supervisor in Los Angeles County. I doubt that's true, but it makes a point. You know, we have camaraderie and we have conflicts. You know, I've been there 20 years. I've worked with 6 or 7 other supervisors over the years. Some of them have been real easy to work with. Some of them very difficult. And when it comes to the county-wide interests, when it comes to keeping the county in fiscal health, when it comes to not giving away the store that puts the county in a position to go bankrupt, the supervisors have been in lockstep and very courageous to stand up to interest groups that wanted us to spend willy-nilly, and we wouldn't do it. When Governor Davis signed the 3% at 50 pension reform, so-called reform, that allowed local government to give police and firefighters a pension of 3% per year of their highest salary when they turn 50 years of age. It was absolutely an absurd thing to do.
And it's going to cost us billions.
And those who did it are threatened with bankruptcy. We didn't do it. We stood up to those who wanted us to do it. So whatever our personal likes or dislikes of each other are, when it comes to doing what's in the best interest of the county, for the most part, that board, all the boards I've worked with have done a very creditable job.
Okay, so the 5 little kings, is that an accurate depiction of the county soups?
Well, it's a powerful position, but you have to understand that it's also an unbelievable set of responsibilities when you think that you're running the entire welfare system, all the children's system, you're running our jail system, all the sheriff's departments, you're running so much, all your taxation system, property tax and so on. There is an awful lot of responsibility. So at the same time, there is an awful lot of power because you can change so much within the 5 members. But again, I think it's an opportunity to really do good, solid civic work because you have a range of issues you can work on so much, but if you understand the duty and the responsibility that you have to the 10 million residents that you represent, I think that you will find it an unbelievable challenge and responsibility. So again, somebody just coined it, oh, you know, they should do this and they should do that, but I worked with colleagues that were very thoughtful about the issues that they were working on and the priorities that they had, and I think that during the time that I sat there, it was rough and rocky with many of my colleagues from time to time on different points of view. But I think at the end of the day, if you look at the history, while at least some of us have been serving there, it has been very, very solid fiscally, very solid in a responsible fashion, looking at policy issues in a responsible fashion, and trying to be as open and creative in creating new programs and sort of putting away the stale ones that haven't been working. So again, a great opportunity. I love the work because I love the range of issues, and I love just having to work with 4 other colleagues on these major issues.
We're going to talk more about Board of Soups and some more exciting things with Gloria Molina after this break.
So they say it's a man's world? I don't see anybody's name on it.
While they were doing their thing, we slowly changed all that.
Today, women can do anything men can do. And there's one thing we're even better at.
If I got to go to college, oh my goodness. I like discovering new things. You get to see what works for you and what doesn't. That helps you evolve as a person. You get to make like a supernova of skill or talent or whatever it is. I've always wanted to go to college. I just feel like that's my destiny. My name is Queen, and I am your dividend.
We're back on Beverly Hills View with former County Supervisor Gloria Molina. So, Gloria, before the break, we were talking about your time on the Board of Supes, 23 years. Yes. What is it about the job that's so intoxicating? Why do, for the most part, supervisors take that job and stay for the full term? When you were first elected, there was no term limit. Now there's a term limit. But why do supervisors stay in that position so long?
Well, I think that any of us that have been involved in policymaking in the past enjoy the kind of independence that we have on the Board of Supervisors, the opportunity to be creative and problem solving, but more importantly to see implementation at the same time and watch it. So you're managing those issues. I know that's what I loved. I mean, you had 85 issues coming to you every single week. So you had to be prepared and briefed, from contracts that were small contracts to very large ones, to innovative programming or things that needed to be done or working on the budget. So I think the active participation, the things that were going on, for me, it was fascinating. It was interesting. I loved every part of it. I hated giving it up, but it has been one of the best experiences ever. And I think it's because you get to legislate, you get to budget those items, and you get to implement them, and you get to review them as they're working. Sometimes they don't work very well, and you have to pull it all back in and redo it. And so I think that that range of opportunity, so you just aren't policy making, you just aren't budgeting, you're doing that whole range, makes it fascinating and interesting for anyone who is interested in policy making overall.
Yeah, as we were discussing, it's hard to summarize 23 years in just a few minutes, but just give me two or three of your the things you're most proud of that you personally spearheaded and saw come to fruition.
Well, there are many things. Of course, you know, I fought for the hospital to be rebuilt to the full size, and hopefully eventually it will.
You're talking about the county hospital.
The county hospital, because it's an unbelievable hospital, and it still needs 150 new beds. Hopefully, we left a plan in place so that hopefully the new supervisors will do that. But one of the things, working on all of the issues, particularly the issues of children, I think those were the most important things. One of the programs that we did is to eliminate children out of Skid Row, out of homelessness. We created a homelessness team that started operating right on Skid Row, and it was a team that involved a nurse, a social worker, an eligibility worker, and someone who had resources. And so we put them out there, and any time there was a child that we would find on Skid Row, we would approach the family, the caretaker, the parent, and try and find a way that we could get that child off of Skid Row into a positive program of getting them back into housing and hopefully a job, and so on. We just think it's just a negative environment for children, and that worked very, very well. So I'm glad that's happening. Now we have those teams, as I understand, all over the county for various homeless encampments. It's really a shame to see our children having to go through homelessness and those kinds of problems. There's a lot of adults that are irresponsible, and you can't deal with many of those issues. But with children, there's absolutely, you have to step in and be aggressive. So that was a very solid program. We created a great educational program for foster kids. So I'm very proud of that. And of course, there were things like the Gold Line to the east side, which I was proud of, and of course, Grand Park, which we've been doing and continuing to build on. There were so many great opportunities, and of course building the Plaza Cultura y Artes, so many things like that we did in and around the community that I think will transform people's lives in the future.
In Zev's clip, he mentioned that your board really held the line on raises and held the line because you remembered the 1994 bankruptcy of Orange County. Absolutely. And that was still very fresh. Are you worried that the board today might be in a position to give away the store, so to speak, in terms of raises, in terms of caving into some demands from labor? Does that concern you?
Well, it concerns any one of us as taxpayers. Hopefully, you're going to have a Board of Supervisors who knows how to get to that balance. We left a balanced budget. We left a surplus. We have hopefully a set of a structure in place so that we have a solid set aside and a reserve all of the time. Hopefully, the supervisors, although we've seen some changes already, are going to be attentive to those needs. I think that the needs of workers are tremendous, but at the same time, our employees are well paid, there's great opportunities for promotions, and there's always safety, because the other part of it, many people want raise after raise after raise, and I remind them, look what happened in the city, look what happened in the state. There were furloughs, people lost their jobs, and of course programs were lost. So I think balance and stability, and that's what I said to Hilda Solis, who replaced me, and I hope she'll follow that lead. I think that Sheila and others will as well. I think there's a great opportunity. If you can keep the balance, you can do so much in Los Angeles County, keep so many programs thriving and working, and of course, keep a good, healthy balance across the board as far as your budget is concerned.
It's very important. You got to pay the bills.
Absolutely.
Okay, one more clip from a very special friend here. Take a look.
I never achieved, to this day, I would like to have pocket parks, but to Gloria Molina's credit, I used to stand at City Hall and look up to where the music center is above Grand Street, and there was an area, and I put in 54, 55, 56, we should have a park here. And it took only till 2 years ago to get that park, but she was able to put that park together, and I've gone on the foundation for that. We had 42,000 people at that park this New Year's. 42,000, not one arrest, and no liquor.
The great Roz Wyman there talking about Grand Park and your accomplishments there. Let's talk about that. You mentioned it just a second ago, but that was nice to have Roz acknowledge that. But how did you make that happen?
Well, it wasn't an easy thing to do. We had an opportunity because we had some property that we wanted developed, and we had talked about reimagining Grand Avenue. Had a lot of leadership in looking at how we develop and making Grand Avenue, of course, grander than we could. And so in the development that we were looking to build, and we had a lot of competition, but once the companies were selected, of course, the idea was always that they were going to contribute to some kind of green space setting. And of course, that's when the negotiations began. And of course, they're going to pay $50 million over the life of their project to lease our land. I just asked for it up front. And I thought it should be done up front because this important amenity to the community, much of the building that was going on across the way, which unfortunately has still not been built, are really high-end condominiums, high-end restaurants. There wasn't going to be an opportunity. So this park created that opportunity for everyone to come together. I insisted that they pay the money up front and that they start building at the same time, that they would start building the other properties. So before they could do anything on their properties, they had to start with Grand Park. And we're so fortunate that it finished, it's completed, it's done so well. And so I'm very proud of Grand Park. And I do hope we're going to make it grander. The two buildings that are there, the courthouse, as well as our Hall of Administration, are buildings that are slated to come down eventually. I mean, they are old, they're not as purposeful as they used to be. I am hoping that we could find a good location for a new state courthouse. I'm hoping we could find a great new location for the Board of Supervisors. And once those two buildings are gone, we'll have this unbelievable green oasis downtown. I think that may not happen in my lifetime, but it certainly is something that I'm looking forward to and that the community should look for. This is a park for all of LA County, a park where everyone can come together. We have a lot of wonderful public programming that is going on every single day. I'm very proud of the work that's going on there.
Now, you alluded to your quilting earlier, so let me
Yes.
ask you about that. You're a very proud quilter. Tell
I
us
am.
about that, and that's such an interesting aspect that has nothing to do with politics. So.
Nothing to do with politics, but like anything else, you need something to calm you down after the kind of day that I usually have.
Sure.
And I am very fortunate that I came across quilting, and it's something that I almost did every single evening when I came home after dinner and to relax, and it was just great therapy, and I've enjoyed it, and I've met a whole new world of people.
Sure.
I love doing it. It's a creative part of me, I guess, that has come out, and it's something that I still enjoy doing. Now, of course, I get involved in quilting guilds and quilting parties, and I do all kinds of other things, and I've met great, great friends, but it is a part of me that I enjoy, and I love promoting quilting wherever I go.
So now that you've had a little time to decompress, What's next for Gloria Molina?
Well, I'm working on various boards that of course I haven't had as much time to vote to, and so I'm going to spend some time doing that. But we're creating a leadership program over at Whittier College, which I'm very proud of. I'd like to see more and more Latinas in leadership roles, not necessarily political leadership roles, but in educational leadership roles and business leadership roles. I think we have an opportunity, and I think that we as Latinas have to have our own kind of opportunity to build the kind of leadership that is still connected to a community. We have a huge responsibility. There's still so many of us that have not been able to get the education, to have command of the language, to really get to a level of full opportunity. So when some of us succeed, as we have a duty. And so building leadership that is responsive back to the community is an important part of the new leadership that we need to build. So I'm looking forward to doing that kind of work.
Just 60 seconds left here, but what advice do you give to young women, particularly young Latinas, that may want to, have seen your career and may want to get involved in politics, maybe run for an office? What advice do you give them?
Well, the first thing is they need to be involved in the community. And you just don't get up one day and say, I'm running for office. You have to have some footing in the community, being involved in issues. You've got to be a volunteer, and then you've got to be bold and strong. You have to have the skill set. You have to have the passion to do it, because it's not an easy job. It's a very tough thing to do. It is an enjoyable thing once you get the hang of it, but getting there is a tough thing to do. But I tell all young women that they need to be involved in the community. They need to be involved in campaigns and elections. I just didn't get up one day. I'd worked a long way to get there. I was a sticker and licker before many of them, and spent my time in building myself up with the opportunity to hopefully be prepared when an opportunity came up, as it did in '82 when I ran for the city council, and then again when I ran for the Board of Supervisors. So you got to be prepared, you got to be ready, and you have to be bold.
Gloria Molina, tremendous career. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Josh.
We'll see you next time on Beverly Hills View.